Talk About with John Twig is brought to you in part by Brian Shaw with Mackey Research Capital in Campbell River, offering portfolio management, investment planning, and insurance products.
Hi, welcome to Talk About here on Shaw TV North Island. Thanks for tuning in. My name is John Twig, and the guest today is Bob Bray. Do you know who he is? Well, he's a man about town. You've been in Campbell River for a while, eh?
5 years now.
Yeah, but you were busy in Vancouver as a businessman.
I was. I retired in the Vancouver area in Surrey, and then my wife and I moved here to Campbell River.
Yeah. So when did you get the political bug? I should point it. He was on the choice slate. He ran for council, and now he's very active in the BC Conservative Party. So what gave you the political bug?
Well, I got the political bug pretty well after I retired, and I was doing some reading and decided that I would pursue this venture.
Which came first, local politics or provincial, or kind of both?
The provincial politics came first because it's the education system and a small improvement to the education system that I'd really like to see and help move along.
Oh, really?
And that's actually why I chose the Conservative Party, because in their policies they are quite strong on a parental choice in education.
Was this like subsidies for private schools?
And
by the way, that's a complex issue. It's been in the news a lot. Now, it's just background the readers a bit. The readers, pardon me, I'm an old print journalist. The private sector schools, some of them religious schools, had long been wanting to get fair funding from the province. They used to get nothing. And over time, beginning actually in the 1970s, they started to get a little bit. And recently it's been increased, but my understanding is it only goes to 50% of their costs still, but I'm not sure.
Yes.
Do you know about that?
Yes, that's quite right, John. It's 50% for most of the private schools. Yeah. Perhaps the religious private schools get 50%, but there's some private schools that are quite wealthy, quite well funded, funded better than public schools.
Privately funded, though.
Privately funded, yes. Yeah. And they only get 35%.
Oh, okay.
But what I'm talking about is a bit along those lines. It's still in the independent school side of things, but it's called a public charter school.
Oh.
Alberta has 15, and Washington State has 25. Not all up and running, but they're sort of geared up for 25. And I think if British Columbia wound up with 20 charter schools spread out around the province, I think it would be good for the system.
So what is a charter school?
Well, it operates just like a public school, but it doesn't have a school board.
Oh. So
the charter is with the Ministry of Education, meaning you've got to teach the curriculum.
Right.
You've got to stay away from religion. You've got to accept everybody who comes at your door, as long as you've got space for them. Special needs, whatever, just like a public school.
That's a big issue, because there's a lot of private sector schools now that cherry pick the students.
Yes, but a charter school can't do that.
Yeah.
And because it's so in line with the Ministry of Education, it gets 100% funding on the operating side.
Huh.
So a regular public school run by a school board, in addition to the operating grant, they get capital funding. But a public charter school would not.
What's the advantage then?
The advantage is that the school can run its own affairs.
Oh.
So
So no football team if they want, or
that's right.
Year-round football if they want.
That's true. But particularly you get the teaching staff together that have a common philosophy, and then they build up a good working rapport, develop a good school culture.
I just figured it out. It's a non-union faculty.
It winds up being non-union. They are registered.
You can't fool.
Oh, yes. Well, the union element has an interesting impact on public education,
and for both sides, for better and for worse.
That's true. That's true. And for example, when there's a vacancy in a public school, it can be filled through the bumping mechanism of a union contract.
Right.
And that can upset the team, the working team, and the philosophical mix in the school, that sort of thing.
So let's say if a small school has to downsize because of enrollment declines, a senior teacher can bump a more junior teacher in a different school in the same district.
That's true.
Okay.
That's true.
That's bumping.
That's bumping.
The charter school?
And the other thing of a charter school is it can experiment, or it can take an educational technique and really explore it to its best and then demonstrate it. And if it works, word of mouth gets out to other parents. Hey, my kids who was reading below grade level until they went to this school, now they're at grade level and they're enjoying school.
Yeah. Would it be year-round if they wanted as well? Or?
It could be. Yeah. It could be. Their funding, though, would be based on the public school 9 months.
Yeah. Interesting. So the BC Conservative Party has policy on charter schools?
Not quite.
Okay.
We're working on that.
You're working on that.
Yes.
I'm going to interject. Bob is very active in the party on the directors level, and we'll get into that. But where are we at with charter school policy in the BC Conservative Party?
Well, the BC Conservative Party is working on the platform for the coming election.
Yes, May 2017.
That's right. And our party is in a very interesting position at this point where we can advance some new ideas, get them into the public debate. Whereas some established parties avoid items that are very controversial and particularly on this particular subject, public charter schools, where the teachers are certified by the province, but they're not members of the BCTF.
Yeah.
And that makes it a controversial policy.
And it goes unsaid a little bit here, but the BCTF is one of the most influential groups in the province when it comes to politics, because when they decide to get involved, they can make a big difference.
Yes, that's very true.
Now, let's jump to the BC Conservative Party. It's an old name, but it's had a series of revivals and a series of leadership changes. And right now, the former leader, Dan Brooks, is he acting leader now, but he stepped aside from being the leader?
He did step down at the beginning of the year, and he was interim leader until our annual general meeting in February. And now he's no longer interim leader, and we are a political party in search of a leader at the moment.
Yes, and September convention up north, is that?
That's right. In
September what?
September 17th in Prince George.
Yeah. And nobody's come forward yet that I'm aware of.
No one has come forward. We've been searching for about 3 months.
Yeah.
So far, we've got about another month to go.
And there was a pretty big entry fee, as I recall.
Well, there was last time.
Okay.
It was 20,000 last time. This time it's 5,000.
Oh, that's not so bad.
So
the federal NDP has a $30,000 entrance fee.
Yes.
And we just recently in the news, at least as this is being recorded, there was a woman who has declared that she's interested unofficially to avoid the 30,000. So 5,000 for BCCP is not bad.
Yes. So we have a process of vetting the candidates who are interested.
Yeah.
So several have been through an interview process.
Oh.
And so as I mentioned, we have still a month to go, and we have a few people who are coming forward, and they may move along to the interview process, and we'll just see. By the middle of July, we'll know how many candidates there are.
I'm itching to ask this question. Now, Bob does the communications. He's the treasurer. And there was one other thing you're active.
Oh, membership chair.
Your
Yes.
membership chair. He runs the computer membership list. And so you're the jack of all trades there. You're going to go for leader too.
Well, no, that's not in the cards.
It isn't, eh?
That is not in the cards.
Your wife won't let you.
Well, there's that, and but the party is really looking for a young person to be the leader. It'll be someone who's can last for the long term and go through several electoral cycles.
Yeah.
And we had a young person in Dan Brooks.
7 daughters.
7 daughters, and there were high hopes at the time that the party would strengthen under his leadership with financial resources that could make it possible for him to continue. But as a volunteer, full-time leader, he just couldn't join all the dots.
Yeah, right. Is it going to be a kind of a northerner? Because, like, I'm a little familiar with the party. They've got a few cores. They're very strong on the island compared with other regions, not necessarily strong compared to the other parties yet. Fraser Valley, pretty good. Mm-hmm. And interior, I'm not so much. But the north, it's turning out to be kind of like the center of the party's strength, is it not?
Well, yes. I think we have some of our best chances of electing an MLA up in the north, particularly the northeast. The leader wouldn't necessarily need to come from that area.
Yeah.
But our first few MLAs might have a very northern flavor.
You're going for just a few instead of going for 50%?
Well, yes, we are going for a few. Going for a few. We're only going to run a dozen or 2 dozen candidates. Well, that's under discussion within the party. But that is really what we're favoring at the moment. It's not been an official strategy, but we want to run a few strong candidates in ridings where we have a good chance of succeeding.
Rather than sending somebody from one riding to run in an adjacent one because they can't find a candidate.
That's right.
That happened last time.
That did happen last time. And but one of the criticisms that our party has and weakens our appeal is the splitting of the vote on the right side of the political spectrum. So when we only run 10 or 20, we cannot split the vote. So we're getting rid of that issue.
I'm a political scientist a bit, and I can quibble with that. Because if you split the vote in a few key ridings, the same effect as if you split the vote in a riding that's going to be Liberal anyway, or NDP anyway.
Well, that's true. And we've looked at some ridings.
Yes.
And we've taken the right-wing vote, the Liberal vote and the Conservative vote, and we've averaged it.
Another way is to say the anti-NDP, anybody but the NDP vote.
Well, no, the Greens are in there.
Oh, that's true.
But when we compare the average vote of the Liberals and the BC Conservatives, and we compare that to the NDP, there's some ridings where the average right-wing vote is greater than the NDP. Yes. So even if we split the vote in those ridings, 50-50, the Liberals or the Conservative would win if the voting patterns continued.
Yes. Yeah. Oak Bay comes to mind, West Vancouver maybe?
Yes, West Vancouver is one, and the Northeast. There's 2 that qualify in the Northeast. Okay. Several in the Fraser Valley, several in Richmond. Now, however, the Richmond ridings are being rejigged a little bit, so we haven't done a thorough analysis there.
There's a big ethnic factor in Richmond as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So are you optimistic, or just sort of like, well, we've got to do this because it's the right thing?
Well, I'm optimistic about getting some fresh, new, right ideas into the debate. And the party is still formulating those. Yeah. But we have put one together. We got it into our policy document last February for an example. And it has to do with the justice system. Oh, yeah. So we will be calling for lay magistrates into the justice system to make the justice system more accessible to people with ordinary financial resources.
You know, I was going to say, gee, I've never heard about that, except this is Campbell River, and that's what Haig Brown was.
Oh, yes?
Yes,
Okay.
he was a non-legal trained magistrate, and a very good one. I think he probably learned the law in due course.
Okay, well, that's a good piece of history to know.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, John.
Yeah. I don't know how many people know that, but yeah, he's a good man.
Yeah.
So yeah, that could work. And you know, like instead of like, let's say there's a civil litigation or something happening in a very small community, both parties have to travel all the way to Prince George to get it heard, as opposed to say going to the magistrate in Terrace.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So the policy though. Recently, you've got an energy guy, Gary Sainin is his name, I think?
Yes.
He's been pounding out this very interesting energy policy stuff. So is that his idea, or is that's not party policy yet, is it? Or
well, it's interesting. This is one of the things that we've been doing in the absence of a leader. So we've created the task force concept, and the energy task force is the first one we've put together.
Yeah.
So there's a few people on that. Gary Sainin is the spokesperson for the energy task force.
Oh, so those aren't his ideas alone then?
He writes them and sends them around to his committee.
Okay.
They vet them and so on, and we try and go through the wording so we don't misspeak something that would embarrass the overall party, because they aren't.
That's another thing that never happens. Not.
Yes. So we're doing that. The media really hasn't picked up on them. They're not.
No.
They're not really announcements. They're more opinion pieces.
Well, kind of essays too, in
Yes.
the sense that they're quite long.
That's
And
right.
The more and more of the modern media, it's got to be tight, short, or else.
However, we send those around to our members, and on the whole, they're being quite well received.
Yeah.
But when we send the emails around, of course, a bulk email, you can unsubscribe from these things. And so we have a few members who, they may be conservative in other areas, but they're not quite as conservative as some of those articles on energy, and they unsubscribe.
Let me guess, the climate issue.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we could talk for the next remaining minutes on climate alone, because I sympathize with those articles, by the way, because I think climate alarmism has gone too far.
Yes. So we're basically calling for, let's debate these things, and people who are skeptical on the climate alarmism, have a voice in the debate.
But I'm not pro-pollution either. I think there's got to be a common sense. But another thing is, like, this fixation on climate is missing all sorts of key issues. Like I favor, for example, BC starting its own bank again and having its own currency as a backup parallel to the others. Nobody's touching that. So there's a lot of issues for the party to address.
There are a lot of issues. One of them that resonates a bit with this area is we look at our inland sea.
Yes.
And we are talking, and again, this isn't agreed upon yet, but we're looking at the advantages if the province looked after the inland sea.
I think inshore.
Inshore, all
Yes.
right. Okay,
Yes.
so the federal government is responsible for the coastline, but for the outer coastline.
Yes. Yeah.
And because there are some decisions made about the inshore waters that
They take 2 weeks to get the poor horse to ride to Ottawa, and then they telegraph the answer back.
yes.
Yeah. 6 months later, oh, sorry, the fish are dead.
Right. But if it was a good answer, if it was an answer that understood the dynamics and the issues and the local issues, it might be even worth waiting for. But often those answers don't get all the nuances that are needed.
Yeah, I think closer to home decision making, whether it's education or fisheries, it's a good thing. Time is flying. Is there anything else about politics you want to toss in before I move to
Well, just one thing on the, you mentioned my role as treasurer in the party. So what that has meant is I've been able to get the central operations of the party done out of Campbell River. So our mail comes to Campbell River, and we have a local bank here, and our auditor now is Chan Noasad Boats.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh. So the Campbell River-based BC Conservative Party.
That's right.
The headquarters. Now, I'd love to talk about Victoria sewage, but actually I asked Horgan about that, and he ducked it too. I had John Horgan on the show a few weeks ago. But you're active in the Senior Centre, you're active in Elder College, and you're very active actually in genealogy.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that, the genealogy.
Well, the Genealogy Society here in Campbell River is quite well established. They have a library in the Maritime Heritage Centre and pay rent, a hefty rent, $650 a month rent. And this is quite a challenge for a society with 100 or so members. But the society's been doing that for some time.
$650 a year?
No, $650 a month.
A month. Ouch.
Yes. So we're the main tenant of the Maritime Heritage Centre.
Yeah.
We have a well-stocked library. We're getting a grant from the city next month, $6,000, that goes towards a microfilm reader.
Awesome.
We had enough money in the bank that a couple of months ago, a microfilm reader, a slightly used one, came up with for a very good price.
Yeah.
So we bought it, and it was within the $6,000 grant. So
I'm going to jump in. Just in case somebody out there, genealogy, what's that? Well, that's people's heritage, their family relations.
Yes, and so there's been a call, maybe we should change our name and call it the Family History Society to make that more self-evident.
Yeah, so people don't have to Google it and then, how do you spell that?
That's right.
Yeah. So that's going well.
That is.
Yeah.
And I am the editor of the quarterly newsletter there, the Treehouse.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Now, you ran on the choice slate, locally, municipally. How do you think the city's doing things now? How's the council doing and stuff like that?
Well, they did one. They made a very good decision just a month and a half ago about the emergency shelter that had shut down when the provincial funding ended. And it took them a month or so to apply themselves to it, but in the final analysis, they granted some money.
They found some surplus money.
That's right, and opened it up, and the
surplus in the sense that it was unspent in the budget, not necessarily wasted.
But that's such a superb program, connected with the breakfast program that the church puts on there, and.
You know, it occurs to me, because I cover council pretty regularly, there's a huge time commitment to being a councillor.
Yes.
If you had won, you wouldn't be able to do the provincial politics.
Yes, so there's some advantages of not being a councillor, that's true.
Another blessing in disguise.
Yes, yeah.
Imagine being the only right-winger on a centrist council.
Mm-hmm.
That could be very frustrating.
That could be, could be.
Yeah.
However, in that process, I did learn about municipal financing.
Yes.
And particularly looking at the reserve funds and the capital reserve and the operating reserve.
Yeah.
And as much as the operating reserve is results from an overtaxation exercise, it's now it grows at $1 million or $2 million a year. So it's now up in the $8 or $9 million range.
This is Campbell River?
This is Campbell River, and this is the operating surplus. The capital surplus is a wonderful thing to have, and it's very wise of the council to proceed.
Well, there is a deficit of infrastructure renewal.
Yes, and that's what the capital reserve is for, is the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And
so would you tell council to do something you wish they were doing that they're not?
Well, yes, I would.
What's that?
Yes, I would. It has to do with our new hospital that's under construction.
Parking?
Well, there's the parking issue, but it's a wonderful building they're putting up. I think the Liberals deserve a lot of credit for the way they've put that together.
Except it doesn't have a daycare.
However, it doesn't have a daycare. What the problem is the rush to demolish the old hospital.
Oh, yes.
The demolition, I think, should be postponed.
Yes.
And so there's some discussion about that. There's some reasons for demolishing it. The seismic concern, asbestos concern, that sort of thing, and the parking issue. Yeah. But these are all sort of window dressing reasons. The substantive reason why it has to come down is because the province can't afford to keep it open. Yeah. So that's a long way of saying...
They say they can't afford it, but they can find money for all sorts of questionable things.
Well, that's right. That's what they say. But that's a hard nut to crack because they made a commitment to the community to operate that, and plus 45 new long-term care beds over at New Horizons. So they're doing their homework. Yeah. However, there's still considerable unmet need, and that hospital was built when it was a nonprofit society for many years here, and even so, we pay 40% of the hospital through the regional district, hospital regional district. Yeah. I even called the hospital regional district. I says, at what meeting was it decided to demolish the old hospital? I'd just like to see the minutes. Yeah. And they informed me that decision was not taken at the regional district. Yeah. That was a VHA decision.
Well, we got to cut it off there, but I'm going to add, Mayor Andy Adams has to sign the demolition permit.
That's true.
And your colleague Walter Jakeway was refusing to sign a demolition permit, and I think Andy's going to do the same thing too.
That would be really good news.
It's a public building; it should stay in public use. Right. Okay.
Right, and it might take a private nonprofit society to come up with some private money for the daycare and a few other things to put it together.
Okay. Well done, Bob. So my guest has been Bob Bray. Thanks very much, and thank you, Valerie and Laura, Chaz and Gord, and thank you for watching Shaw TV North Island. We have a YouTube channel if you'd like to watch this scintillating interview again. Good night.
Talk About with John Twigg is brought to you in part by Brian Shaw with Mackey Research Capital in Campbell River, offering portfolio management, investment planning, and insurance products.